Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Outreach with Reggie, where building bridges with stories, solutions, and truth for our communities. Today, I want to sit down with something that may already be happening on your block, in your neighborhood, or maybe even right outside your window. Gentrification. On paper, city leaders call it revitalization. They say that it's about progress or growth or even just new businesses or new jobs. But in reality, on the ground, it's often displacement, erasure, and a fight to hold on to home. When a Starbucks shows up where your grandmother's corner store used to be, that's not just about coffee. It is about who belongs and who gets pushed right out. So today's episode, Gentrified and Displaced, we'll be looking at the human cost of urban development. We'll be breaking down the data. We'll hear some real stories in there. And most importantly, we'll talk about what resistance and solutions look like. So stay tuned. I'm your host, Reggie Holloway, and this is another amazing episode of Outreach with Reggie. Let's the basics. What is gentrification? Gentrification is when a neighborhood experiences an influx of wealthier residents and investment. On the surface, that sounds positive. Who doesn't want better sidewalks, grocery stores, or even safer streets? But here's the flip side to that. Because as these new residents move in, property values and rents skyrocket. Long term residents, often black, brown, and working class, are pushed out. Even more, let's take a look at the numbers. Between 2000 and 2013, nearly 20% of low income neighborhoods in the U.S. metropolitan areas experienced some form of gentrification, one way or another. And in that same period, Washington, D.C. had the highest rate of gentrification by number. More than 40% of eligible neighborhoods flipped. That's not just development, that's demographic change. That's who gets to stay and who gets displaced. Think about neighborhoods like Harlem in New York, Bronzeville in Chicago, or right here in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward. These places used to be cultural hubs filled with black-owned businesses, churches, barbershops. And now, luxury apartments with bike lanes, dog parks. But the people who built those communities cannot afford to live in them anymore. People who carry the stories of what the neighborhood used to look like, the unity and unison that the residents had amongst each other that made the community what it was, are now fighting for resistance against the modern day of today. And as we dive into the human cost of that, that's what we'll make the next segment about. Numbers tell one side of the story. I can fill this whole episode up with a bunch of data and statistics that will validate every single point that we'll be making in this episode. But instead, I'll hit you with some real truth. Gentrification is personal. It's about those families that I mentioned. Here's what happens when rent doubles in just a few years. Elderly homeowners get pressured to sell their homes. Churches watch their congregations scatter because members can't afford their area anymore. Here's one stat just for fun that should stop us. In New York's Harlem, the median home value rose over 300% between 2000 and 2018. Imagine a home that you bought for $150,000 now being worth $500,000. Sounds good if you're selling. It sounds real good if you're in real estate, but what if you're renting? What if you're trying to buy? Well, that dream is gone. To further bring this into, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine Miss Johnson, who's lived in the same house since the 1970s. Her kids grew up there. Her grandkids come and visit every Sunday. And suddenly, her property taxes are three, four times what they were. She's on a fixed income. The developers are keep calling saying, ma'am, you should sell, cash out. Please. We're giving you what this house is worth, or at least what we think it is, by the way. And ladies and gentlemen, that is not revitalization, that is a forced exit. Beyond housing, let's talk a bit about culture. Gentrification does not just push people out of their homes. It pushes out culture directly out of those neighborhoods. Things that I talked about before were a lot of our safety, a lot of our identity, a lot of the things that protect us and keep us safe gets removed out of those neighborhoods. That soul food spot you used to go to after church, gone. The barber shop that was like therapy, closed. The bookstore that carried voices for our people, of our people, struggled to keep its doors open. This past week, this past Friday, after the last episode was released, where I talked about Black-led solutions and resources that you should care about. If you haven't listened to it, please listen back. But on Friday, last Friday, at the time of this recording, I visited two anchors in Atlanta, Four Keeps Books and Medu Bookstore. These places are more than businesses. They are cultural sanctuaries, keeping our stores alive in cities where development is eating up history. But here's the danger. Without protection, these spaces disappear. And when they do, it is not just a building that is lost. It's a memory, its identity, its belonging. Brookings Institution data shows that in some cities, Black-owned businesses declined by more than 40% in neighborhoods that went through heavy gentrification. So when I talk about gentrification, I'm not just talking about real estate. I'm talking about erasing Blackness, erasing identity, and erasing the very heartbeat of our neighborhoods. Now let's get real. Gentrification doesn't just happen. It is not some natural wave of change. It's systematic. City governments give developers tax breaks. Zoning laws are rewritten to favor luxury condos instead of affordable housing. Landlords flip properties for profit instead of maintaining them for tenants. And here's the hard truth. The U.S. has a shortage of 7 million affordable rent homes. And even if you qualify for housing assistance, only 1 in 4 low-income renters actually gets it. That means 3 out of 4 people who need help do not get it. This is why you'll see people in the streets protesting rent hikes. But marches are only step one. Real power comes to those protests that translate into policy. Things like rent control, tenant protections, affordable housing requirements is a fight between everyday people and systems designed to favor profit over people. So, what do we do about this? Because it's not enough just to call out the problem. We need to lift up solutions. Across the country, grassroots groups are resisting displacement. In Boston, the Dudley Street Initiative built a community land trust that keeps housing permanent and affordable. In cities like San Francisco and in New York, Tenant unions are organizing renters to push back against evictions and demand rent stabilization. Here in Atlanta, organizers are fighting to protect neighborhoods like the West End and Peoplestown, where Black families are being displaced by development. These fights are not easy, but they matter because housing is a human right. Everyone deserves a place to call home, not just the wealthy, not just the newcomers, not just the folks with investment portfolios. And I want to be clear, resistance is not about rejecting change, it is about demanding that change includes everyone. Development can happen without displacement, but only if we fight for it. At the end of the day, gentrification isn't about buildings, it's about people. When people lose their homes, their communities, and their culture, we all lose. So I want to leave you with this. Neighborhoods are living things. And if we want them to thrive, we have to make sure everyone has a place in the future that we are building. So I want to hear from you. How are you going to get involved? Has your neighborhood changed since or because of gentrification? Are you for it or are you against it? That's what I want to know from the viewers of today. Because if you've been impacted, share your story with me. Rate and review the show. That helps more people find this conversation. And that opens the door for more meaningful conversations like this. Also, as you know, we are near the end of season 1. So not only rate the show, but tune in to our season finale happening real soon, where it's for viewers like you. Tune in, DM me, ask questions, make your voices known, and I will share it with the podcast so you can hear yourself on the podcast. But until then, stay rooted, stay aware, and keep building. Until next time, peace.